Democrats go for Pete Hegseth's throat. But did they draw blood? Good morning, Kuhner country. Okay, my friends, there were fireworks yesterday at the confirmation hearing for Defense Secretary nominee Pete Hegseth. And I got to tell you, it was an all-out brutal attack unleashed by the Democrats on the committee. They went after him. It went on for 4 hours, and it was relentless. And if you noticed, I don't know if any of you watched the hearing. I did, wall to wall, all of it for, 3 hours and 45 minutes. And I could, honestly, the viciousness, the absolute ruthlessness, the dirtiness, the nastiness by which they went after Hegseth, one after another, after another, after another. And as I told Grace, when we having dinner later, she said, well, what'd you make of the hearing? I said, honestly, I don't know what other name they didn't call Hegseth. They attacked him and insulted him and smeared him and vilified him on every single front. He's a rapist. He assaults women. He's a sexist. He's a misogynist. He's a drunk. He's a racist. He's an Islamophobe. He's a homophobe. He's inexperienced. He's not qualified. They just hit him and hit him and hit him and hit him. And yet, after 4 hours, Hegseth stood standing. And to me, you may disagree with me, I don't think they laid a glove on him. I mean, they threw a lot of punches. They were yelling, they were shouting, they were screaming. And by the way, Jean Shaheen from New Hampshire, Kirsten Gillibrand from New York, a Pocahontas, Chief Spreading Bull from here in Massachusetts, Maisie Hirono, Tammy Duckworth, the screeching, almost crazed, unhinged liberal women. Honestly, I said to Grace, I said, you want to crack the terrorists at Guantanamo Bay like an egg? You want to break them? Just have them listening to these women, these liberal feminist women, screech and screech and screech. Oh, my God. I thought my ears were going to bleed. Never mind poor Pete. Seriously. I thought that was the strategy. It was like a form of torture. Okay. I withdraw my nomination. Please, somebody get cotton balls in my ears. I can't take it anymore. I mean, it was pathetic. Really, it was pathetic. And notice, throughout 4 hours, and you can look it up, look at the tape, look at the transcript. You tell me if I'm wrong. 4 hours of intense, as I said, at times vicious, nasty, heated questioning. They never asked a single question. Not once did they ask about Hegseth's position on Ukraine. How are we going to wind down the war in Ukraine? Nothing. Containing Iran's nuclear weapons program? Nothing. Stopping the rise of communist China? Nothing. Whether he would call up the National Guard to help Trump with securing the border and engaging in mass deportations of criminal illegal aliens. A fundamentally important question. They didn't ask anything regarding national military security. Because in the end, they don't care. That's what was so clear about yesterday's hearing. They don't give a damn about this country's national security. What they fear in Hegseth is that Hegseth will do two things, and this you can take to the bank. He will undo all of the woke ideology, the critical race theory, the DEI propaganda and brainwashing and indoctrination, diversity, equity, inclusion that Biden and Lloyd Austin and the Democrats have tried to foist upon our fighting men and women. And he is going to roll back wokeness. He's going to roll back DEI. As he put it, the days of emphasizing diversity and equity are over. We're going to now emphasize lethality and readiness. We are going to return and restore the warrior ethos. We are going to make the American military the most lethal, devastating fighting force on earth. And we're going to have high standards, whether it's the Army, whether it's the Marines, whether it's the Air Force, whether it's the Navy, whether it's the Coast Guard, and we're going to impose and implement these high standards equally across the board. And all of these generals and all of these bureaucrats who have gotten fat and rich and lazy, they're going to be purged from the military. It's no longer going to be a military of the woke, by the woke, for the woke. No. As he put it, for the first time, we're going to have a defense secretary that's going to have the backs of our fighting men and women. And that's why the most powerful endorsement that Pete Hegseth received yesterday were the hundreds and hundreds of Navy SEALs, of former vets or former colleagues, veterans, who marched to Washington, D.C., packed that confirmation hearing room, standing room only, saying, Pete has our back, we've got his back. And all the Democrats had, when everything is said and done, for all of the yelling and the shouting and the sound and fury signifying nothing, is they tried to attack him for being a womanizer, for having cheated on his wife, and for having a drinking problem. It came down to booze and women. I swear to you, in the end, that's what they were reduced to. Now, as I was watching this, I couldn't help. I am laughing my rear end off because some parts of this, honestly, were absolutely hilarious. You, the party of Bill Clinton, John Edwards, Joe Biden, Tara Reid, anybody? Tara Reid? No, we forgot about that? No? Ashley Biden, his daughter, in her own diary, says that he forced her to take inappropriate showers with her at the age of 12. You're going to lecture us about sexual morality? You, the party of Ted Kennedy? You're going to lecture us about arriving to work drunk? Are you serious? Are you kidding me? These were anonymous smears, as Hegseth rightly put it. He never showed up Fox News drunk. He never showed up at his veterans organizations that he led drunk. He never went to strip clubs drunk. All of this was a pack of lies. And as he said, nobody went on the record. These were all people on anonymity, hit pieces in The Atlantic, in the New York Times, CNN, The Washington Post, to try to destroy my character. And yet there are hundreds and hundreds of people who have worked with me who said none of this ever happened. He never showed up drunk. He never showed up. We can even smell any alcohol on his breath, ever. These are all lies. The moment of the hearing was when, after 3 hours, Democrats kept attacking him. You're a heavy drinker. You're a boozer. You're an alcoholic. You're a womanizer. You cheated on your wife. You're morally unfit to be the next Secretary of Defense. Republican Mark Wayne Mullen of Oklahoma dropped the hammer. Listen to this. Roll cut 4. Mike.
Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because a man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake.
It was over. I mean, I think it was over before it even began. But I'm telling you, after that, it was over. Because he exposed the Democrats and their attacks for the hypocrites that they are. And so, my question now to you, Pete Hegseth, will he be confirmed as the next Secretary of Defense? Did you watch these hearings? And what do you make of the Democrats' argument that he is unqualified to lead the Pentagon and to lead our military? Hegseth, should he be the next defense chief? Your call's next. 620 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Let me be brutally honest with you, like I'm in the confessional. There were times yesterday where I genuinely felt sorry for Pete Hegseth. I really did. This is disgusting. These Democrats are sick. Really, they're sick. They're absolutely sick. They're getting into his love life, who he slept with, who he didn't sleep with. They're just smearing the guy with no evidence. And to see a man, tour of duty, served in Iraq, another tour of duty in Afghanistan, another tour of duty in Guantanamo Bay, literally fought terrorists almost hand to hand. IEDs, fighting ISIS, fighting the Taliban, fighting Al-Qaeda. A man who's put his life on the line for our country over and over and over. Who then, when he left the military, has become one of the most passionate, ardent, strident advocates and champions, not just of veterans, but of the troops on the ground, of the men and women, our boys and girls, as I like to affectionately call them. And to say they don't have enough equipment, their hands are tied with rules of engagement, and he made that point yesterday, I thought, very powerfully, very eloquently. You send us to war without a plan for victory, with no exit strategy. You don't even give us the equipment to win. And then you impose these obscene, ridiculous, restrictive rules of engagement that make it impossible for us to win, where we are slowly being killed and bled by the enemy. And you put us in these endless wars that goes on, Iraq or Afghanistan, that go on for 10 years, 20 years. And you wonder why the men and women on the ground are frustrated? You want to know why nobody wants to join the military? You want to know why recruitment levels are at record lows? Why retention is at record lows? And after all of these fundamental betrayals, every step of the way, you then have us do millions of hours every year where we've got to do mandatory courses about how being white is a sin and how white people are oppressors and minorities are oppressed and how males oppress females and how we have to stand there and be told that the United States is a genocidal country founded upon slavery and the extermination of Native American Indians. In other words, we're being indoctrinated and brainwashed to hate our own country, which, by the way, is the greatest country in the history of the world. And you wonder why morale is at record lows? You wonder why People are saying that critical race theory and DEI are absolute poison to the institution of the military, frankly, to every institution, to America as a whole, but especially to the military. As Hegseth at one point powerfully said yesterday, who wants to fight and die for a country they're being taught to hate? Look what they've done to us, especially under the Biden, Lloyd Austin regime. And I'm the bad guy? I'm the bad guy. Because I served 3 tours. Because all I did was champion for veterans affairs and veterans' rights. And I wanted to modernize and update our military. And then to me, this was the line that to me I think summed it up brilliantly. Absolutely brilliantly. When he looked at Democrat senators, in particular the ranking member from Rhode Island, Jack Reed, who, by the way, is a complete loser. What a loser. What a loser. Ay, ay, ay. And he looked at him and he said, here is the problem. And this is what Trump recognizes, and this is what I recognize. In World War II, we had 7 4-star generals. Today, we have 44 4-star generals. And as he put it, there is an inverse relationship between the number of 4-star generals and thousands of staff and God knows how many bureaucrats and the fact that we no longer win our wars. In World War II, we had 7 4-star generals, and we crushed Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. We won that war like no country ever won a war in history. Now, all we have are parade generals with their ridiculous medals and their stars. And we got kicked out of Afghanistan. We got kicked out of Iraq. We don't win our wars anymore. And then as he looked around the room, after that debacle, that disaster in Afghanistan, maybe the greatest humiliating military defeat in American history, the way we withdrew and pulled out. Who got fired? Who was held accountable? Was Lloyd Austin held accountable? Was General Mark Milley held accountable? Were any of these parade generals, these 4-star generals, were any of them held accountable? No one was held accountable. It's time to clean house. Agree, disagree, 631 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer, cleaning up the liberal bull. All right, Democrats on the warpath yesterday, and they wanted Pete Hegseth's scalp. They don't want him to be the next defense secretary. So at the confirmation hearing yesterday, they gave it to him with both barrels. They hit him with everything they had. My question to you, is Hegseth qualified to be the next head of the Pentagon and the military? I say yes. We need a disruptor. We need a change agent. We need somebody who's not just an agent of change, but someone who understands the needs, the interests, the values, the prerogatives of our fighting men and women who have been neglected and ignored too long. But that's me. Did you watch yesterday's hearings? And do you think the Democrats damaged Hegseth? I say they didn't lay a glove on him, but that's me. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868. Lines are jammed. Larry in Leominster. As always, Larry, you're going to kick us off, and thanks for holding, and welcome.
Jeff, good morning. How are you, sir?
Good, very good. I thought Hegseth handled himself very well yesterday, Larry.
Yes, I watched I was telling Sandy, I was like, no, I didn't watch the hearings. I watched the highlights. You know, I heard everything I needed out of that. So let me since I'm pretty sure you know what a hypothetical is. I know Tim Kaine doesn't know, but I'm sure you do. If you took out his opening and closing statement, and if you took out all the questions from the Republicans, Did you learn anything about his plans based on the questions of the Democrats on how he's going to change the military?
No.
Isn't that like kind of like a prerequisite to finding out whether he's qualified or not?
Oh, Larry, you're dead on. In all seriousness, I mean, you know how much I love you guys, you know, you vets and all of you that serve. Really, I wanted to hear ideas. Okay, so what are your plans to reform the military, to re-energize and revitalize the military? How are you going to make recruitment numbers go higher? How are you going to retain people? Where's a lot of the areas you think we need to cut? Give me specifics. You know, in other words, I wanted to hear his ideas for transforming the military because it needs to be changed. It needs to be transformed. The status quo is unsustainable. Everybody knows that. And instead, honestly, all they kept asking him was, well, if you raped someone, seriously, if you raped someone, this is what, you know, Tim Kaine from Virginia. But if you did rape someone, would that disqualify you? Well, but if you did show up to work drunk, would that disqualify you? So they're looking for a gotcha moment. And they wanted him to say anything, and such as, yeah, that would disqualify me. Okay, all we need to do now is find someone to make an allegation. That's what they were fishing for yesterday. We'll get, you know, and we'll get someday, you know, Christine Blasey Ford. We'll find one of these. He raped me. There you go. And then you play the cut of him saying, yeah, that should disqualify me. And they loop it and they loop it, and then they would knock him out. So that's all they wanted. They were looking for any way to derail and destroy his nomination. And we're talking about the head of our military, the head of our Pentagon. We're on the verge of World War III with Russia because of Joe Biden. Iran is on the cusp of breaking out as a nuclear weapons power. The Middle East is in flames. China, I don't know if you've seen the latest story, Larry. It's the biggest story in Asia right now. They're not just encircling Taiwan and they cut the undersea cable, the internet cable. Now they've got these war barges, these barges that they're setting up for a potential invasion of Taiwan. I mean, things are getting very ugly in the Indo-Pacific. I mean, I could go on. Never mind the invasion at our southern border. What I'm saying is, man, this is a time to be serious. You want to ask him, what is your plan? What is Trump's plans? How are you going? What's your strategy? And how do you plan to execute it? And instead, they just kept rehashing these pathetic smears and anonymous attacks about things that happened 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 14 years ago. And coming from them, Larry, that's what I found incredible. You're going to lecture him on being faithful to your wife? You're going to lecture him? Do you know how many times I saw Ted Kennedy drunk when I used to cover Capitol Hill for the Washington Times? I could name other senators, some of them literally sitting on that committee. In fact, Larry, please don't take my word for it. It's now all over TikTok, social media. Kirsten Gillibrand, okay, Democrat from New York, drunk as a skunk. What, 6 sheets to the wind, 10 sheets to the wind at a bar, taking shot after shot. This is her, a senator, taking shot after shot after shot. And I mean, she's drunk out of her mind. And that's what Mark Wayne Mullen was saying. He goes, if you guys held yourself to the same standards you're trying to hold him, none of you would be sitting here today. How many wives have you cheated on? How many husbands have you cheated on? How many NDAs have you signed? How many times do you all show up drunk for a vote at midnight or 10 o'clock because you've been hitting the bar at the Capitol Hill Club? So that, to me, was the most disgraceful of what I saw yesterday, because there are so many serious issues, and what it just showed, and that's why they kept saying, well, why don't you sit down and talk to us? You ignored us. You wouldn't come to our office. I'm thinking, well, look at you, all of you now. Why should I sit down? To give you what, ammunition? To try to take me down? You're not interested in the truth. You're just looking to destroy me and my family. So why should I sit down with you? Larry, am I wrong?
Sure, and I think your question of the day should be the top three and let everyone choose who asked the dumbest question.
Larry, let me ask you this. I think it's a great question. I think it's an absolute great question. Elizabeth Warren, and I'm going to play the cut, I promise, was so ill-informed. She's so stupid. Pocahontas is so stupid that she didn't even know his rank. She thought he was a general. She thought he was a general, Larry. I mean, Larry, I've got to ask you, really, Mark in Medford made a very, he messaged me on Messenger and he said, Jeff, who's stupider? Really, Ed Markey or the Chief Fullable? Oh, who's stupider? And I'm like, the ice cream man, the ice cream guy, or the Chief? And Larry, really, what say you, Larry? Who's dumber, Markey or Warren?
Well, he handled himself perfectly. Me in that situation, I think I would have said, "Do I get a pay raise with that promotion to general?" Because there's a huge gap between even a 1-star and a major. But here are my takeaways, Jeff. If I didn't know better, he walked into a meeting of the National Organization of Women because there's just a bunch of screaming, cackling hens at him. Tim Kaine is asking him all these questions about cheating on spouses and abuse, yet he was a lapdog for Hillary and Bill, and he campaigned with Doug Emhoff, the girlfriend beater. And what is Denang Dick doing on any military committee? That is the most insulting to me. The man who lied about his time in service and said he was in Vietnam when he never left the States is asking him questions about troop sizes. Are we kidding?
Well, not just that. He said he was unqualified. He said, I would give you spokesman at the Pentagon, like, being a flack, a mouthpiece. Yeah, right. If you want to flap your mouth in front of the microphone, fine. But no position.
Mr. Hegseth, I'm asking you a very simple question. How many men and women currently serve in the United States Army?
Senator, the United States Army, 450,000 on active duty, sir.
And how many in the Navy?
In the Navy, it's 425, sir.
Well, it's 337 this year. How many in the Marine Corps?
175,000, sir.
172,300. Those numbers dwarf any experience you had by many multiples. I don't believe that you can tell this committee or the people of America that you are qualified to lead them. I would support you as the spokesperson for the Pentagon. I don't dispute your communication skills, but I believe that we are entitled to the facts here.
Larry, this guy's a moron. But you're right. It's this is Dick Blumenthal, senator from Connecticut, Mr. Stolen Valor, who lied, said he served in Vietnam. The guy I don't think he's ever seen Vietnam. And so, Larry, this is his 100. No, it's not 175,000. It's 172,300. You're not qualified. No, you're not qualified. Larry, thank you very much for that call. No, really, this guy, Dick Blumenthal, campaigned. You can look it up. Not just that he served in Vietnam, but that he was like Rambo. I don't know if you saw the second Rambo, the First Blood, and then the sequel, where it's Sylvester Stallone, the Rambo character, goes back to Vietnam, basically wins us the Vietnam War. That was Denang Dick. That's how he ran his campaign. The Trump train keeps on rolling, baby. 6:49, almost 6:50 now on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Pete Hegseth weathers the storm. Democrats pretty much threw everything they had at him. And I don't even think they made a mark. I really don't. I know the media has been savaging him now for the last, 18 hours? They have not stopped. Whether it's CNN, MSNBC, the nightly news, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they are hammering the poor guy. But it looks like he has emerged unscathed. The key vote yesterday was by Joni Ernst, Republican, Iowa. She is a veteran, a sexual assault survivor. She came out and said that she will back Pete Hegseth. If that's the case, just so that all of you understand, the Senate Armed Services Committee, 14 Republicans, 13 Democrats. All 13 Democrats are going to vote against Hegseth. Pete cannot afford to lose one Republican. They all thought if he was going to lose one, it would have been Joni Ernst. She, however, is backing Hegseth, so it should be 14-13. He will be voted out of committee and then go onto the Senate floor for a full vote, where so far not one Republican, it's 53-47 for the Republicans over the Democrats, not one Republican has yet said they're going to break ranks and vote against Hegseth. So if the numbers hold, especially after yesterday's performance, Hegseth will be confirmed. As of now, he has the votes. Roman in Boston. Thanks for holding, Roman, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. How are you?
Very good, Roman. How are you?
I'm good. Been a while. I just want to wish condolences to you and your family on
Thank you, Roman. I appreciate it.
Okay. The question was he qualified? Was Leon Panetta qualified? I don't think so. Lloyd Austin went AWOL basically for a week and didn't tell anybody where he was. Yet these guys just flew through committee and got nominated and got selected for defense secretary. Out of all of them yesterday, the one who made me totally sick was Tammy Duckworth. She made an absolute fool out of herself, and even in my opinion, more of a fool than Liz Warren. I mean, Liz Warren, I think we expect that from her, just a shaking old lady who doesn't know what she's talking about. But Duckworth, being a fellow veteran, showed him no respect as a fellow veteran or as a human being. There was no greeting, there was no congratulations, and then lead into her tirade that she went on. She was pointing. Absolutely made a fool out of herself. I think the stars of it, Mullen was fantastic. Tuberville was great. And Pete is going to get through. He's definitely going to get through. And I think, like you said, he weathered the storm, and they put the hardest one on first. He was going to be real. He was the one that I think they were worried about, him and RFK. But I think Pete's going to make it. He's going to get in, and he's going to do a fantastic job. And what makes any of them think that they're qualified for their positions? Did you hear them yesterday? They weren't. That wasn't a Senate committee hearing to me. But they sounded like a mob, just screaming, yelling, degrading, besmirching. I mean, I felt bad for him a little bit because his wife was there and they were talking about things from 10, 12 years ago. Well, Ted Kennedy and Tip O'Neill weren't drunk every single day. Talk about infidelity. My God, Ted Kennedy beat them all. And it's the hypocrisy is just absolutely ridiculous to me. But I think he did a fantastic job, and he's going to get through. Now we got Pam Bondi today, and she should have no problem with those people.
Well, you nailed it, Roman. Look, there's three of them today: Ratcliffe, Rubio, and Pam Bondi. I think Ratcliffe and Rubio, barring some unexpected shock, are going to coast through confirmation. Bondi, I think, will make it as well. I agree with you. I want her as AG. They worry about, the Dems really want to stop her, so they're going to give her a really rough time as well. No, look, Roman, this was the New York Times quoting sources very close to Schumer. Remember, the one good thing about the New York Times is like Pravda and Izvestia. They are the mouthpiece for the Democrat Party, the way Pravda and Izvestia were for the Communist Party. So if in the old days, you want to know what the communists are thinking, you just look at Pravda and Izvestia. Well, same thing. You want to know what the Dems are thinking, that's their Bible. Just look at the New York Times. And the New York Times said Schumer has given the orders. He held a meeting behind closed doors with all of these senators. And he said, we are going to go to war. I want you to destroy every nominee, every possible nominee. I want you to defame them. I want you to smear them. I want you to libel them. I want you to attack them. I want their reputations reduced to rubble, to nothing. And that's another thing what they tried to do yesterday. They wanted to so taint Hegseth that the American public would end up hating and loathing him. And by extension, hating and loathing the Trump cabinet and the Trump administration. That's what this was. So it was lie, lie, lie. Smear, smear, smear. And you're right. It went on for 4 hours. And they were yelling. They were screaming. It was like a mob shouting. I'm like, this is the Senate? This is supposed to be the most, according to them, the most deliberative body in the world? You guys are acting like a bunch of animals. I mean, one was worse than the other. And look, let me just play Tammy Duckworth, because I agree with you. I thought at a minimum, yeah, she's going to go after him hard. She's a Democrat. They got their marching orders from, Chuck U. Schumer. But I thought at a minimum, congratulate him for the nomination, maybe ask a couple of relevant questions as to the job and what he plans to do. Instead, she berated him. I mean, it just went on for 7 minutes. She was yelling. She was screaming. She was shouting. She kept cutting him off. She never let him have a chance to speak. She never gave him a chance to answer. So I want you to understand how crazy these people are. They're trying to claim that because he never led an audit at the 2 veterans organizations that he led, but he's not qualified to be Secretary of Defense. And I'm watching this and I'm like, what does leading an audit? You think Lloyd Austin knows how to lead an audit? You think Panetta knew how to lead an audit? I mean, I could go down and list you defense. You think Donald Rumsfeld knew how to lead an audit? You think Dick Cheney, when he was defense secretary under Bush 41, you think he knew how to lead an audit? Like, what is wrong with you people? Like, this is the best you can come up with? Listen to this exchange. She sounds unhinged, like a crazy person. Roll cut 1. Mike.
Have you led an audit of any organization? Yes or no? I don't want a long answer. Yes or no? Have you led an audit of any organization of which you were in charge?
Senator, in both of the organizations I ran, we were always completely fiscally responsible.
Yes or no? Did you lead an audit?
And the way
yes or no? Did you lead an audit? Yes or no? What are you afraid of? You can't answer this question. Yes or no? Did you lead an audit? Do you not know this answer?
Senator, every
yes
part of my leadership of these organizations has been misrepresented.
I will take that as a no. What were the findings? So there were no findings because you've never led an audit. What guidance did you give the auditors? None, because you've never led an audit.
Can I be honest with you? Really, I think I would have told her to go F herself. No, I know my temper. I got a Balkan temper. I got a Croatian temper. I got it from my dad. Okay, that's my dad had a pretty bad temper too at times. When he blew. I'm the same way. As you can, people have been listening to me for 10 years plus know. When I blow, I blow. It's one of the things I don't like about myself. I got a bit of a bad temper, but it is what it is. You are who you are. You know what? F you. I mean, I just would have told her off. A, it has nothing to do with the relevance of my qualifications. And B, could you shut up for 2 seconds so I can answer your question? Instead, I'm telling you, it's like really out of Mao's China or Pol Pot's Cambodia. Yes or no? Are you an enemy of the people? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes or no? I mean, what is this? An interrogation? What is this? Guantanamo Bay? What is this? You're torturing the person. And you're supposed to be a senator? And this is a confirmation hearing? Pathetic. She came across as an unhinged political thug. Roman, am I wrong?
No, Jeff, you're absolutely right. It turned into, he was there for a job interview, not to be interrogated and like he was on a criminal stand. Excuse me. And who's audited the Pentagon? Have they ever had an audit at all? Is that why it costs $5,000 for a screwdriver and $30,000 for a bucket of bolts or anything. These people they don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea, and they're not qualified for their positions. After watching yesterday, half of them are not qualified. There were some Democrats who were polite and genteel. They got their point across, but they did it the right way. There was more than several of them who actually basically freaked out, because like you, I was thinking as I was watching, I would be screaming at her right now. Like her hair would be blowing back. Like they go on a 4-minute dissertation, and then they give them 30 seconds, yes or no answer. Well, you know what? Some of these questions aren't yes or no. Let me explain. Yes or no, yes or no, yes or no, just like you said. They absolutely made a fool out of himself. But I was really proud of Pete.
I agree. No, I thought he conducted himself. He kept his cool. Oh, well, you could tell he's a military man, that he's been under fire so many, bullets whizzing by his head and IEDs blowing up, and he doesn't get frazzled. Really, honestly, I would have lost my cool. I mean, I would have gotten hot under the collar. I would have blown up at her. And I think, and he was cool, calm. You could tell at times, and I don't blame him. I mean, the guy looked annoyed. Had this look on his face like, this is humiliating. Like, jeez, man, like you're just throwing mud at me. I mean, this is not dignified. But he kept his cool. He never got angry. He never blew up. He always remained very composed, very diplomatic, very enforceful. But no, look, and to finish this, Roman, because I think you're dead on, what he was trying to say, if she would just give him 10 seconds to answer, is we did everything by the book. We were fiscally responsible. We had multiple audits, and I made sure that the audits were done and conducted properly. So he's saying, look, I didn't personally lead an audit. I'm not an accountant, but we did audits, and I made sure they were done, and they were done properly. Like, I'm trying to give you a proper answer to your question. And say, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no, yes or no. Lady, you're an animal. That's what I would have said to her. You're an animal. And then, that's it. That's the mistake. Because then everybody says, oh, you called her an animal. That's sexist. That's misogynistic. Oh, yeah, he lost his cool. He can't be defense secretary. I'm sure they prepped him. I'm guaranteed they told him, look, Pete, we think you've got the votes. We've got to win over Joni Ernst, but I think we can do it. You've got to stay calm, no matter how much they yell, how much they scream, no matter what insults they throw at you. Pete, you want the job? Yes. Stay calm. And he did it. He remained very disciplined, and he did it. Honestly, I was proud of the guy. Roman, thank you very much for that call. Tommy in West Virginia, thanks for holding, Tommy, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Tom.
Thank you for taking. I listened to part of the hearings yesterday, and I just found it unbelievable the way Elizabeth Warren went after him. Will you say right now that you'll never drink alcohol? All I can say is that I just look back at Ted Kennedy and the womanizing that guy did. He drove his wife, Joan Kennedy, to the point she had to go to the Betty Ford Clinic of Ted Kennedy's irresponsible behavior and the moonbats that...
The question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about, because it's not
about it right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job.
I understand that. I just need a yes or no here.
Come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be at the Defense Department.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
I got to say, Tommy, sorry, we just throw that cut in to reinforce your point, but boy, he humiliated her with that. That was a great comeback. I mean, you're so stupid, you don't realize I'm not a general? You don't even know my own rank? Like, that's how stupid you are? I mean, he embarrassed her. He humiliated her. But no, Tommy, just to go to your point completely, Ted Kennedy was a notorious drunk. But forget Ted Kennedy. The person sitting practically right next to her, Kirsten Gillibrand. Again, look it up it's everywhere. This was a year ago, if that, drunk as a skunk. She's at a bar, and she's just belting him back. She's like slurring. I mean, you guys are. I'm a senator from New York. I mean, she's drunk out of her mind. This is the same Elizabeth Warren. Tommy, do you remember when she was trying to make herself seem more personable and likable and can relate to ordinary people when she was running for president? She cut that ad with her husband. Hey, you want a beer? Hey, you want a beer? Walking into her fridge in Cambridge. Like, you want a beer? And even, to the husband's credit, he's like, no, like, since when do we drink beer? We're Chardonnay. All we do is drink wine here. Like, we're drinking beer now. So this is a woman who likes to belt them back and have wine, especially when she's with her friends or with her husband. But suddenly she's lecturing Pete Hegseth on you're not going to touch a drink when you're in the defense secretary for 4 years. Why don't you not touch a drink for 6 years? You phony Indian, you. I mean, Tommy, this is a woman who doesn't even know her own DNA. Doesn't even know her own DNA. And she's going to lecture Pete Hegseth about whether he should work in a defense industry job after he leaves or not, because she can't even know his position. She doesn't know her own DNA. How's she going to know the guy's position? She doesn't even know the guy's a general. I mean, Tommy, this to me, the people of Massachusetts should be embarrassed. This is your senator? Tommy, what say you?
Well, the other thing I learned in that hearing, I did not realize Lloyd Austin, before serving the public under the Biden administration, worked for Raytheon. Hello? The hypocrisy just runs wild. And it's the old, this is the old playbook of how to discredit somebody. They did it with Clarence Thomas. Unfortunately, with Thomas, it was womanizing. So now it's the playbook of womanizing and boozing it up. Well, you know something? 2 words, Hunter Biden. I rest my case.
Tommy, drop the mic. Tommy, thank you very, very much for that call. I really appreciate it. No, that's what the American people saw. That's why the Democrats didn't lay a glove on the guy. They're like, you guys are a bunch of hypocrites. All of you you're judging him? You? Are you kidding me? You whores. That's what it was, a gallery of rogues, scoundrels, thieves, and whores. And, and by the way, Chief Spreading Bull is going to go on about, are you going to take a job in the defense industry? Are you going to make money off of your position? Hey, Chief, I swear, this is what I mean. I would never be confirmed because I blow my top. Excuse me, a chief, and that's right away. The moment I say chief, I'm done. Chief, how much money have you made since you were senator? I think you're worth now north of, $50 million? So you can line your pockets, but nobody else can? Is that how it goes here, Chief? Now, this is from the same woman who is so stupid and so incompetent, she had to lie. Okay, a woman whiter than I am, with blue eyes and blonde hair. Just if you've never met me before, I've got hazel eyes, kind of grayish, balding really, but brown hair. So she's whiter than I am. Okay? She's whiter than I am, I'm telling you. And she marks down that she was a Native American Indian to get a teaching gig, to be a professor. This fraud, this con woman, this grifter. And she's standing there in judgment of Pete Hegseth. Are you serious? A joke. That wasn't a confirmation hearing. That was a joke. Carrie in West Bridgewater. Thanks for holding, Carrie, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Carrie.
Jeff, watching that hearing, if you could call it that, yesterday, all I could think of was what Tucker Carlson said, is that we have become a nation of shrill, angry women and weak men. I was embarrassed watching these harpies screeching at Pete Hegseth, not with questions, not with anything of substance, but just shrieking and getting hysterical. They did not do women any favors. They clearly are incapable of holding the positions that they hold. The worst, I thought, was Gillibrand. I was listening to her screeching about moms in the frontline combat and LGBTQ and just going on and on. And I wanted to reach out, punch her through the screen and say, do you have a question? Or are you just going to sit here and screech and get your woke bona fides so that you can fundraise off of this, so that your stupid...
To ensure that
give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women.
Commanders do not have to meet quotas for the infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When
It just went on and on. Carrie, can you please, we're up against a hard break. Carrie, can you please hang on? Because I really like to finish this with you, because you hit the nail right on the head. My ears are bleeding again, just having to listen to this woman. Ay, ay, ay. This is what Pete Hegseth, and this is what he endured. This is what the American people saw yesterday. He's getting confirmed.
To ensure that
give me one example. Please give me an example. I get you're making these generalized statements.
Quotas to have a certain number of female infantry officers or infantry enlisted, and that disparages those women.
Commanders do not have to meet quotas for the infantry. Commanders do not have to have a quota for women in the infantry. That does not exist. It does not exist. And your statements are creating the impression that these exist, because they do not. There are not quotas. We want the most lethal force. But I'm telling you, having been here for 15 years, listening to testimony about men and women in combat and the type of operations that were successful in Afghanistan and in Iraq, women were essential for many of those units. When Ranger units went in to find where the terrorists hiding in Afghanistan or in Iraq, if they had a woman in the unit, they could go in, talk to the women in a village, say, where are the terrorists hiding? Where are the weapons hiding? And get crucial information to make sure that we can win that battle.
I mean, that was just a taste of Kirsten Gillibrand, and she just, as one of the listeners messaged me on Messenger, Sergeant Rock, Jeff, she's like a banshee. I mean, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Holy mackerel. I mean, I don't know about you. My ears, again, they're bleeding again. They won't stop bleeding. Okay, 7:22 here on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's bulldozer. I want to go right back to Carrie in West Bridgewater. She said Gillibrand in particular really got under her skin yesterday, saying she makes, frankly, women lawmakers look bad. I think she just makes female liberal lawmakers look bad, but that's me. Carrie says she was disgraceful. She spoke over Pete Hegseth. She wouldn't let him answer a question. She kept yelling, screaming, berating him, that it was a pathetic spectacle. Carrie, did I sum up your position accurately?
Yes, you actually did. And it's funny, Jeff, that clip you played, I don't even think that was the worst of it. That was pretty mild compared to the histrionics she was going on about moms and the LGBTQ community. You're right. It made liberal women look worse, if that's possible. Hirono, I think, was oxygen deprived at birth. I've never heard her say anything intelligent. Duckworth is a combat vet and a disabled vet. Thank you for your service, but that doesn't make her a great senator. She's not very bright. Liz Warren is a fraud down to her toes, and she always has been, the fake Indian. Gillibrand, Hillary Clinton's successor, enough said. It was so embarrassing. I wanted to stick knitting needles in my ears after I slugged her. She was so obnoxious, and she never got an actual question out. It was all soapbox pontificating, and mark my words, all of them are going to fundraise off of this. All of them.
Well, Carrie, it seems that was almost their purpose. It was, as you put it, to be patronizing, to lecture, to be condescending, to get on a soapbox and, just berate Hegseth for 7 minutes. Not let him speak, not let him answer. They weren't interested in the truth. They weren't interested in, what his policies will be, what his reforms will be. I mean, just Carrie, look, this is one answer, one question I wanted asked, and an answer that I think we, the country, need to know. As an example, Iran now is very, very close to getting the nuclear bomb. Now, the question is Israel going to have to take it out? Are we going to take it out? Are we on the verge of war? And as the Secretary of Defense, would you support, let's say, an air attack or missile strikes or whatever it may be, a military operation to destroy Iran's nuclear capacity? I'd like to know the answer to that. I think the country deserves an answer to that. They didn't ask anything like that. It was all women in combat, which he kept saying, I think 50 times. Women are going to stay in combat. I'm not going to touch women in combat. Women are going to be allowed to remain in combat. We want women in combat as long as we don't sacrifice physical standards. That's all I care about. I mean, I don't know how many times a man can answer a question. But it was all gays in the military, LGBTQ plus, DEI, being woke, being transgenders in the military, and of course feminism. It was all playing to their base. Am I wrong, Carrie?
No, you're exactly right, and it was. I even thought it was funny that they kept also bringing up his drinking. Wasn't their presidential candidate, isn't she known for being rather fond of the grapes?
Oh, Carrie, drop the mic. Kamala Harris, drinky. Look, again, I said it 2 times, but let me just say it one more time. Gillibrand, please just punch in, go to Google or whatever, DuckDuckGo or whatever, and just punch in Senator Gillibrand drunk at a bar. And it's making the rounds. This was recent. I mean, she's plastered. She's hammered. Absolutely hammered. So, I mean, that's why Mark Wayne Mullen said, yeah, you're judging Hegseth? Are you kidding me? Now, by the way, Hegseth has now made a vow, a commitment, saying, I will not touch a drop of alcohol the whole time I'm Secretary of Defense. What else do you want? 7:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, Pete Hegseth, President Trump's nominee to be a Secretary of Defense, in the Lion's Den yesterday. Senate Armed Services confirmation hearing. The Democrats tried to draw blood. Did they? Did you watch the hearings? What did you make of the hearings? The Democrats now, the media, in full collaboration alliance with the Dems, are trying now to beat the drum that Hegseth lacks the qualifications or the experience to be Secretary of Defense. They say he's never run a large organization like the Pentagon, which has, 3 million people, a budget of $850 billion. That's with a B, almost $1 trillion budget. They say that Hegseth may be brave, may be courageous, may be a war fighter. served multiple tours in Iraq, Afghanistan, Guantanamo Bay, but he is not Secretary of Defense material. They further, and this was their main line of attack, say that he lacks the character to be Secretary of Defense, that he showed up to work, they claim, drunk, that he was a heavy drinker at times, that he was a womanizer, that he cheated on his wife, and that because of his womanizing, because of his drinking, he simply is not morally fit, does not have the moral authority to be Secretary of Defense and to lead our men and women in uniform. Now, the one that really went after him hard on this line of attack was the creepy clown, Tim the Clown Kaine. Senator Tim Kaine from Virginia, who, remember, was Hillary Clinton's Veep, her vice presidential nominee in 2016. So, creepy Kaine, the clown, and he really looked like a creepy clown yesterday. The guy looks borderline satanic. He really does. Went after Hegseth for the womanizing and even invoked his 7-year-old daughter. Roll cut 16, Mike.
Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child that had been born 2 months before, and you tell us you are completely cleared? How is that a complete clear? Senator, her child's name is Gwendolyn Hope Hegseth, and she's a child of God, and she's 7 years old. And she was, and you cheated on the mother of that child less than 2 months after that daughter was born, didn't you? Those were false charges. Well, no, fully investigated, and I was completely clear.
I mean, so hold on. You, Tim Kaine, you, who was a pit bull, a rabid defender of Bill and Hillary Clinton. Do I need to go on about Bubba? The rapes, the alleged rapes, how many women he slept with, how many times he cheated, this sexual predator and his enabler, Hillary Rotten Clinton? And you're going after Hegseth for affairs that allegedly took place, what was it, a decade ago? I mean, this guy's disgusting. Honestly, disgusting. And then when he started to bring in his 7-year-old girl, I'm telling you, the hair started to go up on the back of my neck. I'm like, this guy's a pervert. What does his child have to do with any of this? Seriously. What are you're into kids? Like, what is his child? What do you like? Why are you invoking his 7-year-old daughter? What the hell does she have to do with any of this? I want you to listen now to Scott Jennings on CNN. He's the only voice of reason in that entire network. And I think he hit the nail right on the head. Not only did Hegseth emerge, I believe, unscathed, and will be the next Secretary of Defense, God willing, but Tim Kaine came across as an absolute pervert. Roll cut 19, Mike.
Well, in short, I think Pete Hegseth kicked their asses today. I mean, it wasn't even close. They didn't lay a glove on Hegseth. No mistakes, calm, cool, collected. I mean, before the thing even started, you had this like Code Pink, protester freak show trying to disrupt the hearing. That's the Democratic base, by the way, which probably explains why the Democrats on the committee acted in such a bizarre and unprofessional way. I was appalled at some of the way these senators handle themselves and some of the lines of questioning. I mean, Tim Kaine sounded like a sex pervert in his questioning of Pete Hegseth. Blumenthal, who lied about his service in Vietnam, questioning Hegseth's qualifications. You had Gillibrand, you had Warren, you had Hirono going on unhinged rants about things. Angus King obviously doesn't understand what it's like to fight terrorism. On and on and on. Hegseth was cool in the face of this unhinged questioning. They made him look good today. It would be difficult for a Republican to vote against Hegseth after the Democrats' unseemly mudslinging today.
Bingo. Bingo. See, this is what the irony, and this is what I told Grace. She, because I was watching it and she's got other stuff to do. And she's like, how's he doing? I said, honestly, they're really making him look good. If any Republicans, some of these rhinos like Joni Ernst, if they were on the fence, they're not going to be on the fence anymore. This was a freak show. And the more they viciously and ruthlessly and nastily attacked him, frankly, the better he kept looking. And after a while, again, he came across, you felt sorry for the guy. There was like a sympathy. You're like, no, this is really dirty. This is really below the belt. These Democrats are sick. They're sick. And frankly, they look sick. You just look, the way they act, the way they look, the way they speak, the way they behave. And so by the end of it, I'm like, he's going to be confirmed. He's going to come out of that committee 14-13. Every Republican's going to vote for him. Then it's going to go to the full Senate floor. And the Republicans have the majority in the Senate, 53-47. I'd be shocked if even one Republican now defects. If anything, Fetterman may end up voting for him. Because there's a lot of sympathy now for Hegseth in the country. The way the Democrats clearly abused him, tried to humiliate him, and mistreated him. Agree, disagree. Frank in Bedford. Thanks for holding, Frank, and welcome.
Thank you for taking my call, Jeff. And
my
your
pleasure,
father's
Frank.
wearing a mega hat up in heaven looking down at what you're doing in the mega.
Thank you, Frank.
Us.
Thank you.
What I saw here is a George Carlin double. They ask the stupid questions. He exposes them and says, what does that have to do with my job? It was absolutely brilliant. He's not only exposing them, half these people will never get reelected if people are awake and paying attention. It was just so classic. They asked a question, what does that have to do with my job? Then he looked at him. If you caught him, he says, keep pushing me. Basically, I'm coming for you, and you're not going to stop me. Did you catch that? I think I heard it about maybe 2 or 3 times. I'm very proud of what he did. I think it was very calm. It was very well done. And he basically is telling you, people voted for these idiots in your Democratic states. Look at what you've done to your country. Look at what these people have done to our military that is important to protect us. What do you think, Jeff?
Frank, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I think your analysis is spot on. You can see it on his face. You're not going to stop me. We're going to get this thing done. We're going to clean out the Pentagon like we're going to clean out the FBI, like we're going to clean out the Justice Department, like we're going to clean out the deep state. We're going to clean out everything. And the more rabid the Democrats are, the more unhinged they are, the more America looks at them and says, this is not a political party. This is a freak show. These are a bunch of clowns, creepy clowns, evil clowns, crazy clowns. And that's what we saw. To me, the shock yesterday, I thought, okay, they're going to hit him, but it's going to be a well-coordinated, effective, attack. They were swinging wildly. And, Frank, and you know this better than anybody because you watched it. They just kept cutting him off. They did the way they sounded like it was an interrogation. They wouldn't let him speak. They wouldn't even give him 2 seconds. And they kept talking over him. So then he's trying to talk. Then they're talking, and then they're raising their voices. He's trying to talk. Then they start yelling. Then they start screaming. Then they start shouting. So they came across as shrill, honestly deranged, and a bit loco, nuts. Look, already now, there are stories flooding out of California that the incompetence of Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass has become so shockingly apparent that these are woke Democrats who now say, I'm voting Republican. They've got a political 3-alarm fire on their hands in California. You watch yesterday's hearings. If you're in Virginia, you vote for Tim Kaine. Are you nuts? You're in New York. You vote for Gillibrand. Are you nuts? In Massachusetts, you vote for Chief Fullable, Pocahontas. Are you nuts? So, Frank, I agree with you. The more they show us who they really are, I think the more the American people are going to get disgusted and revolted. And I think Hegseth now is going to ride even greater sympathy and support right into the top of the Pentagon. And I hope he follows through on everything he says he wants to do. Because 4 years of Pete Hegseth, and we will have the most lethal, effective, ready military in the world. And God knows we need to restore our military. Agree, disagree? Did you watch the hearings yesterday? And should Hegseth be the next Secretary of Defense? I say yes. What say you? 750 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. Why? Why were the Democrats and the entire corrupt establishment media and the vested interests, especially the military-industrial complex, why the donors, why are they so determined to ruin and defame and destroy Pete Hegseth? Listen now to Hegseth, because he lays it out very clearly. He's not beholden to anyone except President Trump and his America First agenda, i.e. the American people and the troops on the ground. Roll cut 10, Mike.
Now, it is true and has been acknowledged that I don't have a similar biography to defense secretaries of the last 30 years. But as President Trump also told me, we've repeatedly placed people atop the Pentagon with supposedly the right credentials, whether they are retired generals, academics, or defense contractor executives. And where has it gotten us? He believes, and I humbly agree, that it's time to give someone with dust on his boots the helm. A change agent, someone with no vested interest in certain companies or specific programs or approved narratives. My only special interest is the warfighter. Deterring wars, and if called upon, winning wars by ensuring our warriors never enter a fair fight. We let them win, and we bring them home.
Amen, brother. Amen. In other words, he's not going to be a shill for the military-industrial complex, say the way Lloyd Austin has been. Because as it came out at the hearing yesterday, Lloyd Austin served on the board of one of the most wealthiest, powerful defense contractor companies in the country, Raytheon. In other words, I'm not here to, for Lockheed Martin or for Halliburton or for Raytheon. I'm not here to make money for the warmongers. That's why we never win our wars. That's why these wars last forever. That's why we keep starting wars but never finishing them. Because all of you are beholden to the military-industrial complex. No. I'm going to be representing for once and defending for once the men and women, our boys and girls, as I say affectionately, with dust on their boots. The ones who do the fighting and the dying. And as Hegseth, I thought, brilliantly said, and it was very powerful, he said, look, let's be very clear. The overwhelming majority of the people who serve our country and who we send off to fight and die in our wars aren't your children. They're not the sons and daughters of senators or members of Congress or the cabinet or the political class or corporate America or the media. They're not the sons and daughters of our privileged elites. They're from low income, middle income, working class income families. And they deserve a Secretary of Defense that will finally have their back. And to me, that's the mortal threat that Pete Hegseth poses to this corrupt status quo that has allowed the swamp to get richer and richer and fatter and fatter. But our men and women keep dying and dying and dying in one endless war after another. And then when everything is said and done, look at Afghanistan, look at Iraq. Our men and women performed incredibly. They never lost a battle. Name me one battle we lost in Iraq. Name me one battle we lost in Afghanistan. And yet we end up leaving with our tail between our legs. Because of these incompetent, corrupt generals and political leaders. And Hegseth is saying this is going to stop under Trump. A, we're not going to get involved in wars. And if we do, as he put it, it's not going to be a fair fight. It's an unfair fight. We're going to crush you. We're going to destroy you. We're going to win quickly and decisively and bring our troops home with victory and fast. That's a patriot. That's a Secretary of Defense. That's the leader I want at the top of the Pentagon. But that's Jeff Kuhner. I want to hear from you. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, it's the Kuhner Country poll question of the day. Sponsored by Mario's. Mario's Quality Roofing, Siding, and Windows. Should Pete Hegseth be confirmed as the next Secretary of Defense? Not will he, because it looks like right now he has the votes. Unless something very dramatic changes, it looks like he will. He's got a glide path to confirmation. He's going to get out of committee. It's going to go to the Senate floor, and it looks he's going to get 53. He may even get Fetterman, which is 54. But all he needs is 50, because J.D. Vance is the tiebreaker. So it looks like he will be confirmed. But I'm asking a different question. Should Pete Hegseth be the next Secretary of Defense? Is he the right man for the right job at the right time? I say yes. What say you? A, yes. B, no. You can vote on our webpage, wrko.com/Kuhner, wrko.com/Kuhner, Kuhn as in National ER. You can also vote via X, my handle, at the Kuhner Report, all one word, Kuhn as in National ER. The one that I thought was the most tedious, like nails on a chalkboard. And it wasn't questioning, it was an interrogation. The one that just, honestly, I don't know how he kept his cool through this. Okay? I guess all those deployments, it's a lot of military training, a lot of discipline, a lot of self-control. Was Mazie Hirono, hardcore Moonbat senator from Hawaii. Now, listen to this. It just went on. This wasn't questioning. As I said, this was abuse. She wasn't interested in his answer. She didn't care for his answer. She was there to humiliate him, to talk down to him, and to basically answer his questions. She was going to answer his questions for him. She was there to smear him. Roll cut 12, Mike. Mike, we don't have it? I'm sorry, Mike? Oh, okay. Do me 3A, please.
Mr. Hegseth, you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as Secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
Absolutely.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense if you drink on the job, which is a 24/7 position?
I've made this commitment on behalf of the men and women I'm serving.
Will you resign as Secretary of Defense
I've made this commitment on behalf of the men and women I'm serving.
I'm not
because it's the most important deployment of my life.
I'm not hearing an answer to my question, so I'm going to move on.
I mean, he's not telling her, yes, I won't drink for 4 years. And she's like, that's a no. I'm like, no. It's just, she's like, you won't take my answer. You're trying to pretend like I'm going to drink when I've told you I'm not going to drink. Now, listen to this one. Listen to this. Are you going to slaughter innocent Americans? It's not a yes or a no. So listen now to this. You remember in the summer of 2020, during the George Floyd riots, how they basically burned much of Lafayette Square to the ground. Remember that historic church? They burned it to the ground. And Antifa was there, Black Lives Matter. They literally made an assault on the White House itself. And they had to take Trump into the bunker because they fear they may overwhelm the defenses of the Secret Service protecting the White House. So Trump was actually saying, look, if this continues, you may have to call in the military and start shooting these protesters in the legs. Because, I mean, people are dying. Cars are being burned. Homes are being burned. Churches are being burned. They're bull rushing the White House. They're trying to storm the gates of the White House. So Hegseth was actually there working a detail as the National Guard. He was actually there trying to restrain the protesters. He was there during that riot as a member of the National Guard. And listen now to this back and forth. Roll cut 3, Mike.
As Secretary of Defense, you will swear an oath to the Constitution and not an oath to any man, woman, or president. Correct?
Senator, on multiple occasions, including as a young second lieutenant, I have sworn an oath to the Constitution,
yes.
and I'm proud to do so. Yes, ma'am.
In June of 2020, then President Trump directed former Secretary of Defense Mark Esper to shoot protesters in the legs in downtown D.C., an order Secretary Esper refused to comply with. Would you carry out such an order from President Trump?
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard unit that was in Lafayette Square during those
events. Would you carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs?
I saw 50 Secret Service agents get injured by rioters trying to jump over the fence, set the church on fire, and destroy
you know what? That sounds to me that you will comply with such an order. You will shoot protesters in the leg.
Look at this. I mean, let him answer. If you're serious about your question, give the guy 30 seconds to answer. Look, what he's trying to tell you is this. Antifa was running wild. They were burning everything to the ground. It was an actual real insurrection. And they were storming the fence and the gates of the White House. And Secret Service agents were being overwhelmed, many of them being injured and assaulted. By the way, notice the liberals never mentioned that. Oh, on January 6th, Capitol Hill police officers were assaulted. It's a crime. Yeah. What about all the police officers and Secret Service agents that were assaulted and beaten during that riot at Lafayette Square? They don't mention that. Suddenly, crickets. Did you notice that? And so he's trying to say, look, it was a very ugly situation. You got to understand where Trump's coming from. That's why he said, you know what? We may have to call in the military because the police are getting overwhelmed. So he's trying to give her a bit of a nuanced, qualified answer. And instead, I say, yes, you'll shoot them. You'll shoot innocent protesters. Yes. But she continues. I'm telling you, it's like nails on a chalkboard. The interrogation continues. Roll cut 3B. Mike.
By people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those are multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC News that run directly contradictory to the dozens of men and women at Fox News Channel who I work with
I'm not
who came
hearing
on
the
the
answer
record.
to my question.
He's giving you the answer. His answer is, they were lies. I never showed up drunk on the job. And I've got hundreds and hundreds of people who are on the record testifying to that. But you're not letting him finish. By the way, she says, do you know it's improper to show up drunk as a service member? Hey, memo to Hirono, to Mazie Hirono. Mazie, it's improper to show up drunk for any job, not just in the military service. Here, let me give you an example. You know me, I don't drink. I'm basically a teetotaler outside of a little sip of champagne for my wedding or my children's baptism, or you can count it on two hands. Okay, and I'm talking a little sip of champagne. So I'm basically a teetotaler. If I showed up drunk on the air, I'm gone. What are we talking about? If I'm not in the military, it's not life and death. I'm not taking on terrorists. I'm not defending our country. If just me showing up on the air, Biden, drinky, Biden sucks. Biden, Mike, make it a double. On the rocks, Mike, on the rocks. I'm gone. Fired. Bye. Adios. Have a nice life, Kuhner, man. Most people, I don't know about you. Your job, you show up plastered. Maybe they may give you one warning, maybe, if you're lucky, but you do it twice. Bye. So they're like, it's improper. It's illegal to show up drunk as a military service member. Yeah. By the way, how many times have you showed up drunk, Maisie? Come on. Let's all. How many times? How many times has Kirsten Gillibrand showed up drunk? I can see her at a bar getting hammered. I want to know, how many times have prominent Democrats showed up drunk as a freaking skunk, whether they're voting or during the course of an ordinary day, during a congressional day, a work day? Because I can tell you right now, there's a lot of boozing going on up on Capitol Hill. Every reporter will tell you that. Every journalist will tell you that. Every congressional aide, every staffer, everybody knows what goes on up on Capitol Hill. Okay? By about noon, the bar at the Capitol Hill Club is open, and they're just coming and going. One member of Congress after another. And a lot of them, it's a double-fisted drinker. It's not one glass. They got two glasses. This was the comment that literally brought the House down. Drop the mic. All of these attacks on Hegseth, based on anonymous lies and smears. People who wouldn't even put their name to the record. And finally, Mark Wayne Mullen, Senator Republican from Oklahoma, said, I've had enough. The hypocrisy is so thick, I'm choking, I can't take it anymore. And this was the most real, authentic moment of the entire hearing yesterday. And after this, Pete Hegseth was in the clear, and the Democrats were finished. Roll cut 4, Mike.
Senator Kane, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night? Have any of you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake.
Jennifer is Pete Hegseth's wife. So look, he's completely right. Thou art a hypocrite. That's what he's saying. And everybody, that took all the air out of everything. You could even see it on the Democrats' faces. They're like, he just called our bluff. He just called it and it's over. Because, yeah, we show up drunk. So by our standard, we should all be disqualified. Yep. How many of us have had affairs? Both male and female senators. Oh my God. I'm sorry. It's a whorehouse up there. It's a bordello. And then again, the same thing I said about Trump, I'm going to say about Pete Hegseth. This NDA about that woman in Monterey, California, where apparently they had a one-night stand or whatever. And so he, signed an NDA with her. It was with his own money. Again, you know me. I only have eyes for my beautiful wife, okay? But I got to call it the way I see it. People sign non-disclosure agreements in this country all the time. The difference between members of Congress and people like Pete Hegseth is Pete Hegseth signed it with his own cash. He said it was an embarrassment. It was a distraction. It could hurt his career at Fox News. Forget it. I don't want just here's your $100,000 and leave me alone. And that's the most expensive one-night stand in my entire life. And hopefully I learned my lesson. But these scumbag members of Congress, these politicians, they've got a slush fund, our money, taxpayer money, to sign their NDAs. At least say what you want about Hegseth or Trump or whoever. They're paying with their own money. So what's it to you? 617-266-6868. Scott in Revere. Thanks for holding, Scott, and welcome.
Jeff, I love you in an unsexual way, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. You always say with such enthusiasm. What do you make of all this, Scott?
Oh, Jeff, I'm going to say one thing. Liberalism is a mental disorder. Period. Just look at these buffoons up there. You know, the same guy, the Republican that you just played, the same guy took a page from the Constitution and said, guess who the defense secretary is supposed to be? A civilian. It's supposed to be a civilian, for God's sakes. Do you believe that? And these people, look at this fool, Lloyd Austin. You look at Lloyd Austin and you compare him to Pete Hegseth. Are you kidding me? Is there even a comparison? And to all liberals out there, to every liberal that thinks what they believe in is right, look at the disgrace and the destruction that you are right, your cult.
Oh, you nailed it. No, you nailed it, Scott. And I'm going to get to that coming up right after the break. I'm going to continue to take your calls. But Joe Biden literally takes a victory lap over his foreign policy and over the debacle in Afghanistan. More next. 821 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, liberalism's worst nightmare, baby. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay. One of the shadows, there were multiple shadows cast over yesterday's Senate confirmation hearing for Pete Hegseth as the next defense secretary. But one of the big shadows, and one that frankly I will never forget for as long as I live, is the debacle and the disastrous withdrawal under Joe Biden that occurred in Afghanistan. Joe Biden, several days ago, delivered his farewell address regarding foreign policy. Tonight, he is going to address the nation at about 8 p.m. about his domestic legacy. And he's trying to argue, I swear to you, that he is leaving America in a much stronger, better place. That both internationally and domestically, things have never been better in the United States, that we are now living in an incredible age of peace and prosperity. This is the kind of gaslighting, the kind of bull, you know what, the kind of BS, the propaganda, as the Russians would say, that they're trying to unleash on his way out the door. Listen now to Biden. This is what he's now claiming in his foreign policy farewell address. Roll cut 35A, Mike.
We've increased our diplomatic power, creating more allies than the United States has ever had in the history of our nation. We've increased our military power, making the most significant investments in the defense industrial base in decades. We've increased the technology power, taking the lead in artificial intelligence and other technologies of the future. And we've increased the economic power, building the most dynamic economy in the world from the bottom up and the middle out, not the top down.
Why did you lose? I mean, why did you, and first of all, why didn't you run again? Why did you let the Democrats or your own party overthrow you in a coup and replace you with Kamala Harris. Because the polls showed you were going to get absolutely annihilated. So they panicked and they replaced you with Kamala. And she still got destroyed. But the fact of the matter is, why did Kamala lose? Why did you lose? If our military power is stronger, our economic power, our technological power, our diplomatic power, if all this peace and prosperity that you keep talking about, you would have won in a landslide. But instead, it was the exact opposite. We're talking now about sheer delusion. I'll be honest with you. I think he's so far gone that they just write whatever they write in front of him and he just reads it and has no idea even what he's saying. Because this is embarrassing. But let's just look at the ledger for a second. Because this is what Pete Hegseth is going to inherit. This is what Donald Trump in 5 days is going to inherit. And it's a mess. The one thing I want to urge everyone out there listening, Kuhner country, please be patient with Trump. This house is not going to get cleaned up overnight. It's going to take some time. A lot of work and some time. Because, I mean, it's a mess everywhere. But let's just look foreign policy for a second. National security. Because that's what Hegseth, in theory, was supposed to be answering questions about yesterday. Instead, it was just one long vendetta and smear campaign. Under Joe Biden, Russia invaded Ukraine in the largest invasion in Europe since World War II. How is that a success? In fact, it has gotten so bad, we're looking at 500,000 dead. If you count the maimed, the wounded, we're looking at 1 million. 10 million refugees. Much of Ukraine destroyed for generations. And maybe the possibility of World War III. That's a success. The Middle East on fire. October 7. Iran on the cusp of a nuclear bomb. Our southern border wide open, 20 million illegals pouring in the greatest border invasion in human history. The rise of China as a military superpower under your watch. And the one I will never forget was the disastrous debacle and withdrawal from Afghanistan, where our mortal enemies not just retook the whole country, they got Bagram Air Base. They got our billions of dollars of our finest, most advanced military technology. And 13 Marines, 13 American soldiers slaughtered by Islamic terrorists at Abbey Gate. And you say this is a success? Blank off. 8:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, let me throw this log on the fire, as I like to say. Joe Biden says that his foreign policy was an overwhelming success. He says America's diplomatic power, economic power, military power, technological power, all substantially increased under his leadership, and that he leaves Donald Trump now with a much stronger national security and foreign policy. As he put it, the wind is now at our back. 4 years of Biden's foreign policy, Lloyd Austin as defense secretary, Blinken as foreign secretary, as Secretary of State. How would you rate Biden's foreign policy? He says it's an A+. I give him an F. What say you? 617-266-6868 is the number. And let me just throw another mini log on the fire. How many of Biden's cabinet picks were rejected? I'm just curious. How many? You mean not one? one of the most incompetent, if not the most incompetent cabinet in the history of the United States. So Lloyd Austin was qualified. He's qualified to be Secretary of Defense. That hack who oversaw the debacle in Afghanistan, never held accountable. He wasn't fired. Milley, he's qualified. Oversaw the debacle, the disaster in Afghanistan. Was he ever held accountable? Was he ever fired? What about Pete Buttigieg? Literally, planes are falling out of the sky. Trains are being derailed. Chemical spills everywhere. Ships banging into bridges. Was he qualified to be Transportation Secretary? Was Blinken qualified to be for Secretary of State? He was the hatchet man. He was the kneecapper for Joe Biden. You needed those 51 intelligence officials to sign his bogus letter saying that Hunter Biden's laptop was a Russian disinformation job. There was Blinken. He'll corral them for you. He'll twist arms. So Blinken was qualified to be Secretary of State? Really? I mean, I could go down the entire Biden cabinet. Who the hell was qualified? Kamala was qualified to be Vice President? Are you serious? Joey, demented, cognitive decline, senile, he was qualified to be president? My point being that when it's a Democrat and he puts up his nominees for the cabinet, it's rubber stamped, one after another. No problem. Everybody's qualified, even though they're blatantly, obviously unqualified. Suddenly, Trump wants his nominees. Oh, we can't have Matt Gaetz. No, can't have him be his attorney general. Pete Hegseth as defense secretary. Oh, no. Just he lacks the qualifications. He doesn't have the character. We can't have him. You phony, you frauds, you. If Lloyd Austin is qualified, then Pete Hegseth is 1,000% qualified. And by the way, Austin was never qualified. Agree, disagree, 617-266-6868. Hegseth says that when he becomes Secretary of Defense, heads are going to roll over Afghanistan. That generals are going to be held accountable. Senior military officers are going to be held accountable. And that many of these so-called four-star generals are going to be retired or fired. Do you agree with Pete Hegseth? Should people be held, senior leadership, should they be held responsible, accountable for what happened in Afghanistan? I'm talking Lloyd Austin. I'm talking Milley. I'm talking the entire criminal cabal. I say yes. What say you? Annie on the South Shore. Thanks for holding, Annie, and welcome.
Morning, Jeff.
Hi,
First
Annie.
off, I'd like to give condolences to you and your family for the loss of your dad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
To all of you, and I keep you in my prayers. This is the thing you have hit on so much. Your show was so loaded this morning. My head is spinning. But every single thing that you have said, I totally agree on. Here's one thing, though. I did sit and watch that debacle yesterday. And the word nasty isn't even come close to what I would call those Democrats. That came from Virginia. I wanted to reach through the TV and just snap him on the nose. He was so repulsive, so disgusting, and to bring a child up like he did is below low. Now, Jeff, we all know that the Democrats are rotten. They're nasty. They have gotten money off of all of our backs. The 13 Marines that were killed in Afghanistan, I don't think any true American will ever forget that, ever. And there does need to be people brought to the head of the line and prosecuted for what happened there. There's no doubt in my mind whatsoever. But here is the thing that I got to put out. Liz Warren from Massachusetts, I was so disgusted, so appalled that woman is still in there and serving the people of Massachusetts. She doesn't serve me. She's nothing of me. We worked very hard to get Donald Trump into office. I want to see Massachusetts work very hard to get her out. That's what I want to see, Jeff.
Well, Annie, look, you said about, you made a lot of points, and all of them very good points. Let me tell you what sticks in my craw. It's not just the way we got out of Afghanistan, how inept, how disorganized, how incompetent, how screwed up the whole thing was, or that we gave the country away to the Taliban and to Al-Qaeda, or that we gave them billions, and I mean billions of dollars, of our most advanced military technology, Apache helicopters, our finest tanks, our finest military equipment, or Bagram Air Base, which is a jewel. How we could have given that away is beyond me. Or that even 13 Americans died. Because in war, soldiers die. This is what to me sticks in my craw. We had soldiers, snipers on the roof at the airport in Kabul, Afghanistan, who saw the Al-Qaeda terrorist. They saw the explosive, the belt of explosives around his chest. And they knew he was going to blow up the gate, Abbey Gate. And that American soldiers were going to get mutilated. They were going to get incinerated. And so he went and asked the upper, he's there on the radio, saying, I've got a clean shot. I've got a clean shot. I've got a terrorist. He's going to blow. He's going to blow. Permission to fire. Permission to fire. And this went all the way up to Austin and Nilley. Permission denied. He then goes again. This has been widely documented. Permission to fire. Permission to fire. He can't believe it. He can't believe it. Permission denied. Permission denied. Lloyd Austin was criminally negligent. Mark Milley, that traitor, that fatso, okay? That fatso, that parade general, that slob, was criminally negligent. And they have the blood of 13 dead Americans on their hands. But they're good enough? Milley retired with honors. Milley retired with a full pension. He's a freaking hero. He just wrote a best-selling book. He's doing the book circuit. The liberals go bravo. I'm not kidding. Milley, yeah, woke. Yeah, critical race theory. Yeah, transgendered people can now get sex change operations. You're our hero. Pete Hegseth says he's going to recall Milley out of retirement, and he wants him to be reviewed and investigated for his conduct. Yes. And he wants these 4-star generals, many of them, to be fired or to lose their rank or to be discharged. I say yes. Because what they did was unforgivable. Absolutely unforgivable. Those 13 men and women, by the way, one of them from Massachusetts, okay, that was one of our own, were stabbed in the back by their own. And I'm telling you that sniper, to this day, you want to know why these warriors come back and they drink? Everyone's like, oh, he's got a drinking problem. He's got a drinking problem. You know why they drink? I'll tell you why. Because I bet you that sniper is asking himself, why did I listen? Why did I listen to that order? Had I just shot him and taken the consequences, 13 of my brothers and sisters would be alive today. The guilt eats away at you. Austin is a scumbag. 850 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer, 617-266-6868. Couple lines are open if you want to jump on. Dr. Grace. Yep, she's back. She's warming up in the bullpen. Grace Vuoto, my wonderful wife, will be on in 10 minutes. Steve in Taunton. Thanks for holding, Steve, and welcome.
Hey, good morning, Jeff.
Hi, Steve.
I'll tell you what, after watching yesterday's debacle, why are liberal women such miserable? If you look at the national media, you know, the Joyless Reeds, the Rachel Madcow, the women on The View, these women that are supposedly representatives, just the venom. I mean, what a way to live, you know?
Well, you know, Steve, look, I think that's the question. Honestly, many people are asking, why are they so miserable and so shrill?
Yes.
And I got to say, Steve, they're obsessed with abortion. It's all abortion. It's all feminism. It's all DEI, women in combat. They won't let it go. I mean, I don't know how many times the guy said, I think literally 30 times. He goes, I'm not going to touch women in combat. Women are going to, I'm not going to ban them from being in combat. I just want to make sure that the standards, the physical standards aren't eroded. So we don't, weaken our military readiness, but women can serve in infantry. Women can serve in any combat role whatsoever. Like, yes. He kept saying it over. Yes, there will be women in combat. They won't let it go. So, Steve, I got to ask you, what is it with these women? It's all identity politics. And they seem to feel the need to hector, be condescending, lecture, and yelling and screaming at people. Somehow they think that's an effective way to communicate. To me, it's extremely off-putting. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, the thing, I likened that Duckworth. It was like watching The Exorcist, Linda Blair, when she was, spinning in the chair, and, Maisie, no, Horono. I mean, my God. Jeff, I'll leave you with this. The only thing I can say is these women are a perfect antidote for Viagra, okay? I tell you. That, if you've had problems with something lasting longer than 4 hours, just turn on yesterday's tape. Have a good day.
Steve, thank you very much for that call. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome. Dan. It looks like Dan's moving furniture. Dan looks like he's rearranging the furniture. Lorenzo, I love that name. Lorenzo in Boston. Thanks for holding, Lorenzo, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking my call.
My pleasure.
And you fight the fight for us. That's really awesome. Hey, you're right about Pete Hegseth, about he's not bought.
Lorenzo, can you do me a favor? Are you on speakerphone?
No, I'm trying to get out of this room I'm working in.
Can you just change rooms or something? Because you sound honestly like you're in the Rockies. Like in the Rocky Mountains. You sound like 1,000 miles away.
Better now?
Oh, much better. Much better. Go ahead, Lorenzo.
No, you're right about Pete Hegseth. The lobbyists don't have their hands in him. The military-industrial complex doesn't have their hands in him. And that's why they came after him. And they're going to do the same thing, Jeff. You know this, to Tulsi Gabbard, to Chrissy Nomes, and Pete Hegseth, because they're not bought for.
Well, Lorenzo, look, today there's a lot of Trump's, 6 of them today are having confirmation hearings. And thank you for that call, Lorenzo, by the way. I think they're all going to be fine. The only one I'm a little worried about, and not that she won't have the votes, but I think they're going to really try to rough her up, really go after her hard, like they went after Hegseth, is going to be Pam Bondi. Because they fear the next attorney general. The next attorney general is the one that's going to make a lot of decisions about who goes to jail and who doesn't go to jail. So I'm going to be watching that as well. And I'm telling you right now, expect fireworks. They're going to go after Bondi just as hard as they went after Hegseth. Rubio, they're not going to touch him. Ratcliffe, they may, hit him a little bit here or there. But the one where they're going to go scorched earth is going to be Pam Bondi. And that's what they did yesterday with Hegseth. They went scorched earth. Because as you rightly put it, he's not bought and paid for. And that's why he's a threat. If he's a threat to the system, if he's a threat to the regime, to the ruling class, to the swamp, as Trump calls it, then they come after you, guns blazing. Honestly, the only thing I thought they were going to jump over the table, some of those crazy liberal feminist Democrats, and just start stabbing the guy. That's how shrill they were. Dan in New Hampshire. Thanks for holding, Dan, and welcome.
Yes, Jeff, and this is why, guys went after Matt Gaetz. They went after Matt Gaetz hard, and Mark Wayne Mullen was one of them, okay, because Matt Gaetz exposed these guys, okay? They're on the take. That's the problem. And, as far as Mark Wayne Mullen, making mistakes, I hope he's going to improve on that 60 and 65 voting record 2 years in a row. So, that being said, my son's in the military, and I'm telling you, Jeff, first thing that dropped was President Trump coming back. He's been in there 19 years, and that was the first shoe to drop for him to re-up. Okay, we're going to need these veterans in the military to train the guys because it's so woke. It's been bad under Lloyd Austin and Milley. My son would tell you. And the next one is Secretary of Defense. And he's excited. These guys are excited for Pete Hegseth because they want somebody who's been there, done it, been in the trenches. And, and the other thing is the fact, you're right, that they're not tied to the dirty military-industrial complex. It's as simple as that. And we got to watch these these senators, because the senators are going to try to squash some more Pence, even the Republicans. We got to keep an eye on Susan Collins with in Maine. F voting record. Lisa Murkowski in Alaska, 45 F voting record, who, like Liz Cheney, she's the Liz Cheney of the U.S. Senate. She voted to convict President Trump in the sham impeachment trial. And that's the thing. Both states, including New York, have systems built for fraud, ranked choice voting. Okay? So that's the other thing. And we got to keep an eye on this other rat, John Curtis, who's looking more and more like Mitt Romney 2.0 on steroids.
Oh, yeah, the senator from Utah. No, I agree. No, Dan, look, on every point, you're dead on. Look, I think why you're saying, if people are asking, because you're dead on, Dan, well, why aren't the Susan Collins or the Lisa Murkowskis, why does it look like, anyway, that they're going to vote for Pete Hegseth? It's honestly because of the power of MAGA. It's Kuhner country. It's MAGA. We went, it was Joni Ernst. We went to her and said, you don't vote for Hegseth, we're primarying you. We're going to give you the mother of all primaries. And we drew a red line when it came to Hegseth, to our credit, really. And we just put so much pressure on them that they realized it's not worth it. This is not a hill I want to die on. We're going to have to get Hegseth in. We're just going to have to swallow it. So we'll see. Nothing. Look, to me, I never count my chickens before they hatch. So, but it appears that he's got the votes in the committee, and on the Senate floor so far, not one Republican has said they're going to vote against him. So it looks like Hegseth is going to get confirmed. Fingers crossed. And a big reason for it, because you're right. Look, Murkowski is swimming in military-industrial complex money. Susan Collins is another one. Just a mouthpiece for, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin and Halliburton. That's why they all love Ukraine so much. It's an endless war. It's endless money for their donors. That's why they're to the death when it comes to Ukraine. Follow the money. And Hegseth is saying, no, we're going to put America, Americans, and our men and women on the ground first. And because of our strength, our numerical strength politically, they fear us and they don't want to be primaried. So they have to toe the line for now. Dan, thank you very much for that call. All right, let me see if I can squeeze one more in before we get to Grace. Janet in Billerica. Thanks for holding, Janet, and welcome.
Jeff, the liberals are talking out of both sides of their mouths, because just last week we saw a firefighter who was not a small woman say that if you get stuck in the corner, if your man gets stuck in the corner, I don't know the exact wording, but basically he's screwed. So how can we have someone say that and, pretty much admit defeat that she can't get him out, but then they want the military to have women?
That's a brilliant point. That's an absolutely brilliant point. That was the assistant fire chief. And, she was asked because because they pushed for so many women to become firefighters. They lowered the standards. And so you're seeing all of these horror stories. You can see it on camera where you have female firefighters, and I'm sure they're very nice people. It's nothing against them personally, but they're like 120, 130 pounds. They just don't physically have the strength to combat a fire or to pull a body out of a fire or whatever. So she's constantly being asked, well, are the firefighters, the female firefighters you've all been promoting, are they strong enough to carry bodies out of a fire? And her answer was, if your husband gets stuck in a fire, then it's his fault. He should have thought of that. In other words, he's in the wrong place. Don't blame us because your husband's in the wrong place. Well, you've got literally men being burned alive. In fact, there was a child star. You can look this up, Janet. I forget the name, but he was born, I believe, is it blind or deaf? But he ended up, it's one of those two. He's either blind or deaf with cerebral palsy. And blind, thank you, Sandy. Blind with cerebral palsy, 22, 24 years old. And he got stuck in the wildfire in the home. And his mother wasn't strong enough to pull him out. And the female firefighters were not strong enough to pull him out. Yeah, they went to get help, and by the time they got back, he burnt to a crisp. He's dead. I mean, this is life and death. There's nothing to do against women or being against women. Women are extremely talented. They can do so many jobs. But there are some jobs that need such physical strength and rigor. It's not that women can't do them. They can, but you can't have a quota. In other words, you have, and that's what Hegseth's point was yesterday. We've got to have high physical standards. If a woman passes it, great. No problem. But if they can't, they can't. But you don't lower the standards because people's lives are on the line. Janet, thank you very much for that call. I really appreciate it. Okay, joining me now, as she always does at this time, Dr. Grace, putting liberals in their place. Grace Vuoto, my wonderful wife, my better half. Grace, how are you?
I am totally wrecked. It's been an ordeal.
Oh, I know. It's been hard.
A couple of weeks. It's been extremely difficult.
I know. My dad's passing away, and the wake and the funeral and dealing with everything, the aftermath, and you've been absolutely incredible. I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done, and honestly, you're my rock. I just want you to know that. Absolutely. I don't know how I would have gotten through it without you. And so I got to ask you, as a woman, I rarely ask you questions as a female or as a woman to comment on women's issues, but I just think it's very pertinent now. In yesterday's confirmation hearings, Kirsten Gillibrand, Elizabeth Warren, Mazie Hirono, Shaheen from New Hampshire, Senator Jean Shaheen, Tammy Duckworth, kept harping over and over about women in combat and that Pete Hegseth is going to rescind women in combat. And Hegseth kept saying, no, I'm not going to. I may have been critical of women in combat in the past. Yes. But as Secretary of Defense, we're not going to rescind that policy. We just want to make sure that we have high physical standards. We don't want to keep eroding the standards because that undermines our readiness and the lethality of our military. What say you?
Jeff, listen, my perspective on the military is you ask only one question. What makes the biggest, toughest, most lethal warrior? And how many of these can you get at a level of excellence? That's the only question to ask. I don't care about gender. I don't care about race. I just want the toughest, meanest fighting force, period. And so it doesn't offend me at all if somebody says, Look at the statistics. Women can't perform at the same level of as men in the military, and if necessary, rescind the policy. I mean, I'm totally politically incorrect when it comes to our fighting force because people's lives are at stake. And I've seen reports about it does not seem to have improved our military to have women in combat situations. We can't win wars. Look at the evidence. So it doesn't offend me at all. As a woman, I think what we should be focusing on is allow people to excel truthfully. And then we have true respect for women in whatever position that is. But don't manufacture results. It doesn't work. It doesn't actually create respect for anybody.
Women as intelligence analysts, women in logistical positions, there are many roles they've played in the military and have played. What Hegseth was talking about in his book that they kept citing over and over again is women, as you point out, in combat, in infantry, where, you're dealing with 50-pound shells, in some cases, 100-pound shells that you've got to load into a big gun or load into a tank, or you've got to carry, say, a pack on you, which is 100 pounds or 120 pounds. All your equipment, the bulletproof vest, everything, plus the rifle. You're looking at 100, 120 pounds in, say, the desert in Iraq or the desert in Afghanistan at 120, 130 degrees temperature. And you got to do it for hours upon hours upon hours. And his point was, physically, many women cannot simply handle the physical toll. Do you agree with Hegseth?
I agree over and over again with what he said. If a person, an individual, a warrior, meets the standards that we set in order to perform a specific role in the military, if that individual meets the standards, they're in. If they don't meet the standards, they're out. It's very simple. But what we've seen now over decades is we twist and turn the standards around in order to suit an ideology. The ideology being that women can do everything just as effectively as men. And that's where I disagree. Keep the standards high. Very rarely you might have somebody, that's a female, that's a warrior, that's capable of doing it. But I don't think that this is something that is necessarily widespread. But what we keep doing is we keep manufacturing. We try to manufacture the results based on what we're expecting to achieve with DEI standards. And instead it really should be the opposite. So, look, Hegseth was basically saying, I want to restore top standards, period. And I don't care about the consequences to that. That's basically, if you read between the lines, that's what he kept saying over and over again. This is why people are gravitating to him, is because he is politically incorrect. He simply wants our military to perform well. And right now, they have definitely been let down over and over again by leadership and by the woke policies that are dragging our forces down and demoralizing our forces to the point that we have such low recruitment levels now.
Grace, many critics of women in combat have made this argument, and I want to know what you think about it. They say, look, take the military out of it. How many women do you see in the NFL, professional football? How many women do you see? Yes, they're female boxers, but they fight fellow women. How many women do you see fight male boxers or fight men in MMA fighting, mixed martial arts? In other words, why? Why aren't women in the NFL? Why aren't women fighting male boxers? Because there is such a size strength advantage that many men have that literally if women played in the NFL, they would be killed. They'd be crushed. They'd be physically annihilated. I mean, it's a threat to their safety, literally to their health and safety. So if we won't let them play in the NFL, why then should we open the door for them to take large numbers of spots in combat roles? What say you?
I agree 100%. And I can say from my own personal experience, that I only met one individual in my lifetime that I thought, wow, this woman can go the distance. This woman can go toe-to-toe with any other warrior that I have seen. It was just one experience, a woman I met on a train. She was just a behemoth. I mean, it was incredible. But for the most part, that's just not the case. Jeff, honestly, I really don't think it's that complicated. For centuries, we have understood that when you're putting together a military force, everybody's life is at stake. And it's not just the people that they're defending, but it's their fellow combat person next to them whose lives are at stake. So if that person can't perform in a pinch, that warrior is also killed. So your prize fighter could also be killed. And look, there is a direct correlation between the low recruitment numbers that we see now to these policies. It's because the true warriors, too, they're turned off by this. You know, someone that is excellent, you really want to be side by side with someone that doesn't meet the same standards? No, you don't. It's a big turnoff. And so I think we're just messing it all up.
Grace, we've got 30 seconds left. Is the military under Biden weaker or stronger?
The military under Biden has been a huge disaster. This has been one of the worst administrations in American history, and in foreign policy, there's no other way to say it. We are now a joke. You see what happened in Ukraine. You see what happened in the Middle East. The moment that Donald Trump left office, the enemies of America decided it is open season. And I think that the withdrawal from Afghanistan was really what set everything in motion.
I agree. Well said. Well said. Dr. Grace putting liberals in their place. As always, dynamite stuff. Grace, we'll talk next week, same day, same time. Grace says most women should not be in combat. Agree, disagree. 9:20 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. All right, one of the things I really pride myself about this show, the Kuhner Report, is that it truly is one of the last few remaining free speech zones left in our country, where we could debate, we can be politically incorrect, everything is on the table, nothing is off the table. And so Grace has opened the door, and to some extent Pete Hegseth has as well. So let's walk through it and have a good discussion. What do you say to Grace's argument, and Hegseth makes a similar argument, that women in combat, to get the kind of quotas that many liberals want, which is 30, 40, 50% women in the military, you have to substantially lower physical standards. And by doing this, you're undermining the effectiveness, the readiness, the lethality of the military. And that in many ways, women, with a few exceptions, obviously, but on the whole, are not suited for roles in combat. Agree, disagree. And let me throw another super quick log on the fire. Pardon the pun. With the wildfires now in Southern California still raging, and now female fighter fighters and this aggressive obsession over the last couple of years, this DEI woke obsession with having as many female firefighters as possible in the LA Fire Department. And now many residents saying many of them just are not performing that well because they're just not physically strong enough. Do you think this is also the case when it comes, say, to firefighting? Because you need such, physical strength and size to be able to do a job like that, that have we lowered physical standards or eroded them to such a degree that now it's literally putting people's lives in danger? Are there just some jobs that women physically, again, with always exceptions, because there's always some women that are very strong, but on the whole, that men are just more suited than women? And of course, it's vice versa. There are some jobs that clearly women are more suited than men, but we're just talking about women in combat and women as firefighters. Agree, disagree. Brian in Boston. Thanks for holding, Brian, and welcome.
Greetings, Jeff. First,
Hi, Brian.
my condolences regarding your dad.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
As I told the screener, I would like to, I'm speaking said first. I think women should be mandated to be in the selective service. I think it's BS that if you're 18 and you're male, you're the only one. Has to be selective service. Second, I personally think that women are a distraction in the military. Makes a lot of the locker room talk in the military, especially among men, makes what Trump said in that bus look like kindergarten talk. And the military in general is more suitable for men versus women. You talk about the physical standards. In the Navy specifically, we had to do a 1.5 mile run. As a male, I pretty much had to maintain a jog, if not a damn near sprint, in order to pass. Women, they could pretty much walk and make the PT standards. It was that stark of a contrast. But again, I think that women altogether, you talk about physicality, they're not physically built. You think about Navy SEALs. Do you ever see a woman as a Navy SEAL? No. Do you ever see a woman as a Green Beret or Special Forces? No. Those are like the cream of the cream of, you know what I mean? They're the cream on the top. But the women on my ship, they were a distraction. I cannot tell you how many times there were a lot of sexual harassment claims. And it's unfortunate what happens, but when you have a small environment like women on a submarine, there's not much room on a sub. And now we have to make accommodations for women. They have their own, you know what I'm saying? It's a slippery slope.
Just to clarify, and Brian, I really, if I don't say it, thank you for your service. I love you guys. You know how much I love you guys. In a non-sexual way, obviously. When you say women are a distraction, do you mean, look, you're together on a ship for many months or on a submarine for many months? Human nature is human nature. Men have sexual needs. I mean, it's just a fact. And they see a woman, and when they see a woman, in other words, it's a sexual distraction. Is that what you mean?
Yes. On that regard, yes. And it's the environment. I would just say in general, the environment in the military, it's stressful, especially if you are deployed in a combat situation, whether you're on a submarine.
I hear you. So you combine, the stress, the close quarters. It's not conducive to military cohesion and effectiveness and readiness. I hear you. Okay, agree, disagree. 9:31 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Okay, my sister Jennifer texted me from Arizona. And and she made a very good counter argument to what Brian just said before the break. Jeff, Israel uses their women in the military. So women can definitely play many roles in the military. Now, that's true. There's no question about it. Women definitely can play many, many roles in the military. The question, though, is in Israel, how often or how frequent or how many women are used in combat roles? See, that's the key distinction. No one's arguing, and you'd be crazy to argue, that women can't be, superb intelligence analysts or logistics. There's many areas in terms of, the military that they can definitely serve, have served, and serve extremely well. What Hegseth was bringing up, what Grace was bringing up, what many people bring up but we're talking about a combat role. That's a different thing. That's a key distinction. And when you got to load 100-pound shells into a tank or into a big gun, into a howitzer or whatever, size and strength matter. There's no getting around it. when you got to carry a 100 or 120 pound pack as you're on patrol in 120, 130 degree Fahrenheit weather, you know, facing a terrorist insurgency. Size, strength, physical stamina matters. And so Hegseth's argument is, and again, you tell me if you agree or disagree, to try to recruit more women, and this is what Brian was trying to say before the break, or he was saying it. He goes, I've seen it. They've lowered standards. Now, what's happening is it's almost a two-tier military. Many men have to run a quicker mile or a quicker 2 miles than, say, women, because they want to get as many to come in as possible. And that's why Hegseth was adamant yesterday. We want to have one high, excellent physical standard applied equally across the board. And if women can pass it, great. If they can't, too bad. That's just how the cookie crumbles. So my question to you, and I'm adding firefighters because of the whole issue in California. So let me throw this into the mix. Are there just some jobs or some roles that require such physical strength and stamina that you're going to see men predominate simply because of the nature of the job? 617-266-6868, or to put it very simply, should women be in combat and should women be firefighters? Susie in Waltham. Thanks for holding, Susie, and welcome.
Good morning, Jeff. Thank you for taking my call.
My pleasure,
My
Susie.
heartfelt sympathy. It's very difficult to go through.
Thank you. Thank you, Susie.
So Pete Hegseth, I think, is phenomenal. I've been watching and researching him. He's a human being like everybody else. And as far as those harpies that were attacking him yesterday, their actions speak for themselves. They're despicable. Now, on to women in combat. So there have been women in combat all the way back to the Revolutionary War. Actually, Joan of Arc was in combat, but that was France. I want to stick with America because I'm American and I love my country. So Molly Pitcher goes back to the Revolutionary War. She had actually gone to combat. Her husband went to fight the Revolutionary War. He was a cannoneer. He ended up getting killed. She picked up the staff and took over for him during the Revolutionary War. That being said, there have been many women in combat roles throughout history. My daughter, who is a Marine veteran, I'm very proud of her. She is actually, when she had to be medically separated from the Marine Corps, she was a sergeant, and she was a infantry assault man. So basically, I used to joke about it because I would pray all the time for her safety. I would make jokes saying, well, she has, 3 bodyguards. Yes, she's in charge of the, of the fuse. She's in charge of the explosion. She's in charge of everything, but she has three bodyguards. Anyway, so when she got injured during a training exercise, it was a male that had injured her, and it was deliberate. So she ended up, it cut her, she wanted to be in the military, in the Marine Corps for 20 years. So it cut it very short. She ended up, I think, it was a little over 7 years when she got injured. And she was very upset because she loved being a Marine. She loved her country, and she loved defending her country. And she didn't, she wasn't looking at the male-female aspect. She did everything possible to measure up. She would do things like, so women in the military, well, back then, they didn't have to do, the chin-ups when they pull on the bar and bring their chin above the bar?
Yes.
So when my daughter got injured, she was doing 25 chin-ups with a 25-pound weight tied around her waist. I do have a picture of her doing that.
Holy mackerel.
So,
Susie, I swear to you, I can't even do one. I can't do one. Forget the 25 pounds around my waist. If I had someone helping me, I couldn't do one. But anyway, please keep going, Susie.
No, I'm just saying stature, there's a lot of people look at somebody and say, oh, you'll never be able to make it. But you know what? There are men of smaller stature also that are very successful in the military. Now, one of the previous callers had said something about, women being a distraction in the military. That basically is self-control. When you're looking at, so when my daughter was in the military, she was very focused. She wasn't looking for, hookup or anything like that. And most people in the military are like that. And I understand human nature. Trust me, I'm not throwing stones, anything like that. But for somebody to use the excuse, oh, women are a distraction, that's just as bad as the terrorists that make women wear the hijab because they don't want to see their face because they're too much of a distraction and they might lose control of themselves and, sexually assault these women. It's an excuse. People need to stop making excuses. What's wrong with our military isn't that there's women in combat. It's the protocols that these woke generals and higher-ups, my daughter would call them higher-ups, have put into place. My daughter also, I would like to add, would volunteer for a lot of, helping out other teams. And she has this letter that she got from this, I believe it was a major, and it just made me cry because in the letter, he was being very thankful and grateful to her because they were trying to deploy a unit and they would have never deployed if my daughter hadn't volunteered to help them to prepare for deployment because they didn't have enough people in this unit to deploy them. So they were shorthanded. So she stepped up and she volunteered and she got this wonderful, wonderful letter from this, I believe it was a major. I'd have to look at the letter again. But I'm just saying that even though
you're making, Susie, I think you're really making a very strong case that there are, definitely some, if not many women who can perform in the military, can perform in combat, as long as you don't lower the standards. And clearly your daughter, achieved and fulfilled every standard. 25 chin-ups with a 25-pound, barbell hanging by her waist. Holy mackerel. So I hear what you're saying. So in other words, look, if women can do the job, if they can meet the standards, let them serve. They want to serve. They're an asset. So don't blame women. Blame the woke policies that have degraded and undermined our military. Susie, very well said. Thank you very much. And honestly, give my best to your daughter. Thank her for her service. And I want to thank you for obviously doing such a good job raising such an impressive girl or woman. I say girl very affectionately. Such an impressive woman. 617-266-6868 is the number. Mo on Cape Cod. Thanks for holding, Mo, and welcome.
Hey, that gal's long-winded. This is Mo. I usually call you when there seems to be a drug problem. And apparently the senator from Hawaii likes a lot of Kuhner. Because she is, I can spot a stoner. I'm retired from drugs 30 years long, but I worked in the nuclear industry, and I can spot one a mile away. And it's just by the tone that they speak and their actions. And wouldn't it be nice if they could have some sort of a drug testing program now that...
Oh, you read my mind. Mo, you read my mind. I was thinking, there they are. You can't show up drunk on the job. I'm like, you know what? How about breathalyzers for everybody, and let's do some drug testing. There'll be nobody left in Congress. There'll be nobody to do the job. 9:49 on the great WRKO. Jeff Kuhner, Boston's Bulldozer. 617-266-6868 is the number. Nate on the North Shore. Thanks for holding, Nate, and welcome.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi, Nate.
Condolences about your father, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Nate.
So, giant loaded question, and I think your wife hit the nail on the head in terms of equal standards, which is important. And I like the analogy with the sports, right? If you want to do this social experiment and legislate outcomes, which is what we're seeing through DEI as well as, even science with electric vehicles, right? But if you want to really do this experiment without lives in stake, try the NFL first. Without changing any of the rules in the NFL today, have female players play with the men and see what happens. And if you wind up statistically seeing that women are getting hurt because they're going up against some big dudes, well, then maybe that kind of tells you something. At the same time, I disagree that that women can't, because I've firsthand seen women in firefighting that can, and even smaller men that can actually, manipulate and pull large people out. There's training that you're given where you're taught tools that you can use, be them ropes, be them other things, where you can pull someone twice your size out of a corner. So I think it really depends on the person. And the last comment I wanted to make was, in terms of recruiting, the Marine Corps, last time I checked, was the one who actually had their numbers, and recruiting has decreased all across the board, including in the fire department. I wonder why. Maybe it has something to do with a mandated shot where people said, I'm not going to die over this. Appreciate your thoughts.
Oh, that's a great point, Nate. That's a phenomenal point. And again, I got to give Hegseth his due. Yesterday, he and Trump were adamant. Trump has made it a point on the campaign trail, but he was adamant yesterday, saying all of those service members that were kicked out of the military because they wouldn't take that, the jab, that experimental vaccine. He says, we're going to reinstate them. We're going to give them back pay. We're going to restore their rank, and they're going to get a full public apology. And I think that's a major reason why recruiting is down. No question about it. No, Nate, look, and just to reinforce what you're saying, and I'm being serious, it's a bit funny, but I'm being serious as a heart attack. I may be a big guy. No, really, 6'3", 260 pounds. I'm telling you, there are a lot of men, 5'4", 5'5", 5'6", 130, 140, 150 pounds, that could beat me in an arm wrestling contest like this. All right? Nate, honestly, I'll bet you the best stake that you could probably beat me. I don't know your size. I don't know anything about you. I'm telling you. Like, I'm in the the lowest percentile in terms of strength. I don't know why. I've never been strong. I never will be strong. I bet you can beat me in an arm wrestling contest. So I believe you. I know you're right when you say, hey, Jeff, maybe he's smaller in stature or smaller in height, but, maybe only 140 or 150 pounds, not a big 250 pound guy. But man, can they pull somebody or, get somebody out of a fire or, be really effective in a foxhole? Or I agree with you completely. That's why I go back to what Hegseth was saying. Keep the physical standards, the standards of physical excellence and stamina high. High. Keep them rigorous and then apply them equally. And Nate, let me tell you what I found really horrific. You tell me if you agree or disagree. Was the exchange between Senator Tom Cotton, Republican Arkansas, where he was going back and forth with Hegseth, and he said, to show you how right you are. And then he lifted the piece of paper. He goes, in the Army now, this is their standard. To meet their physical qualifications, part of it is, you got to run, you got to jog, you got to show, like physical stamina. The 2-mile run, you got to do it in 22 minutes. He goes, that's not even a light jog. That's a fast walk. Nate, I swear to you, at my gym, I do a speed walk. What is it? 4.2, 4.0, whatever it is on the treadmill. I do the 2 miles in 20 minutes. Hell, I swear, under this standard, I could qualify for the Army. Nate, you don't want a slob like me in the Army. Trust me. You don't want a chubby guy, a fatso like me in the military. Believe me, Nate. So when I heard that, I'm like, holy mackerel. How desperate are they now to bring people in? 22 minutes to do 2 miles? Are you serious? I'm joining up. I can serve. Nate, final word to you.
Yeah, no, that's the point. I think the recruiting went down, so they lowered the standards across the board, I believe, except for the Marine Corps. And, I mean, you have great female fighter pilots, okay? Not everyone in the military is necessarily a frontline combat role, per se, in terms of in a foxhole. But, you know, again, just physical standards being across the board. And it's surprising where if you have Republicans that are saying, oh, my God, this isn't right. Well, they're the same ones that are arguing for female sports should be preserved to, you know, level the playing field, because otherwise, like, then, you know.
That's a great point. Nate, honestly, great point. So, no, really, when I heard that, I'm like, I couldn't believe it. I was eating I swear, I was eating a sandwich, a ham cheese sandwich, and I almost spit out my sandwich. But like, hey, I can do 2 miles in 22 minutes. You don't. Hey, I'm not Captain America. You don't want me in the Army. Trust me. I gotta go. Bye-bye.